Welcome viewers to this new series of lectures on Vedic Cosmogonies, and to assist me in this exercise through symbolic expression is Manisha Sharma. And in the earlier part of this topic, we have spoken about quite a few preliminaries about Vedic cosmogony, the meaning of cosmogony and so forth. In this part of our discussion, we shall take that discussion forward to make sense of these representations or Vedic cosmogonies in social context. So, why a particular visualization of our human existence, the purpose of it, the larger questions, the purpose of a life, why things happen, why things are the way they are, and so forth. These very basic inquisitive aspect of mankind is best answered by big organized religions across cultures. So it is not only with Vedic Hinduism that we see this happening. Even in Christianity, Islam and other major religions, Buddhism and so forth, we do find these religions addressing these questions. But as part of historical exercise, we don't have to just know them. We don't have to only read the explanations offered of why things happen, the way things happen, how things happen and so forth, but to make sense of it in real mundane aspect of past, the way it was lived, right? It is with this intent that I have designed this lecture to make sense of Vedic cosmogonies in its social context. So, as you can see on your slide, this is again a recap of what we have discussed so far. Big organized religions usually probe and present origin questions. Traditions born of the origin answers are accorded sanctity by portraying traditions as inevitable, as natural, while in social terms they are deliberately established or maintained. And this is something that we have already discussed, that it is presented as eternal, but fact of the matter is that we must have done something to establish it as eternal, to establish it as something natural, right? Because after all, this is just a human sense that we are making out of our existence around us. There are other animals, there are other species, say, there are dogs, there are cows, there are several other wild animals. For them also it is the same physical reality, but obviously they have not understood the purpose of existence the way we humans do, or a particular community or a particular religious group does, right? It is in this sense that we are pulling it down to the real mundane level to make sense of it, and that is why understanding cosmogony of different communities is so important in history, right? Now, cosmogonic speculations as inevitable and fundamental human activity around contextualizing and rationalizing our existence. Now, again, this is what all of us do. All of us have done across time in history, that we have presented the narrative of why we exist, the way we exist, and where we came from, and so forth. And everything is not factual. So, we use universe or universal entities from, say, cosmos to make sense of things. And in the earlier part of this lecture, I did speak of sun, moon, fire, water, all these basic constituents of life and existence, and the interrelation that is made between them to make some kind of intelligible story. And that is how we tend to understand things. before going further, I would again take a detour to give you another example to make sense of this topic. For example, before empirical sciences came and we understood how the process of food digestion happens in human body, obviously, before understanding it in empirical terms or by actually looking at the processes involved through some device or through logical reconstruction of things which are empirically derived, even before that, we did make some sense of the process through which food digestion happens. Right? How we grow, how we attain energy, how we use energy, how we grow, right? So these anatomical processes or these anatomical details were not actually understood or were actually seen, but it was made sense of. So for digestion, I would just give you the cosmological imagery that was used to understand the process of digestion. Now, all of us must have seen the way food is produced, the way food is cooked, right? Now, for cooking of food, heat is required, which is given through fire. All of us have seen this. Our ancestors in Indian tradition also must have seen that. And if you look at the classical treatises of Ayurveda, say the works of Charak, Shushruta and so forth, you would understand as to how Ayurveda looks at the process of digestion, which is very central to Ayurvedic understanding of human body and so forth and well-being. So, food requires water to be cooked and rendered eatable. A cooked food is something which is consumed. And what happens to that food once we take it inside our body? Then the same imagery of cooking through fire is used to understand the process of digestion. And therefore, the word, Sanskrit word of cooking is same as that of digestion. So, if we were to translate, say, Sita chawal pakati hai. So, how would it be translated in Sanskrit? Sita odram pachati, right? And if we were to understand digestion, then the same word pachati, which is cooking, is used to understand digestion, to connote digestion, to denote digestion, right? So, perhaps there is some fire, what we in Indian tradition know as Jataragini. So, there is that fire which does something to the eaten food, and therefore, Ayurveda Acharyas will tell you that immediately after having food, don't have water, don't have cold water. Why? Because it extinguishes the fire, and therefore the digestion may not happen properly, or it may get delayed. So there is that Jataragni which almost cooks the food that we have ingested, and then as a result of that fire, that cooking that happens inside our stomach, something happens to the eaten food. It gets assimilated, and then different rasas come out, and those rasas are absorbed by various tissues and so forth, and this is how body functions. This is how the vital constituents of our body get made, get absorbed, and then what is excreted as fecal matter is something which is not processed, or which is the residue of this process. And this is how digestion is understood as a process. Now, no one was actually using some device to look at how things are happening, but how it was understood? It was understood with reference to a cosmological image. And that cosmological image was that of cooking of food. In the earlier part of this discussion, which was part 1, I had told you about how irrigation happens, so how water is seeped into soil, then fertilization of egg happens, or cracking of egg happens, and then plants come out, plants grow, which is then eaten by some animal, and this is how the life cycle goes. Now, this is again through channels. So, how it is visualized, that beneath the soil, beneath the surface, there are some channels through which water goes. And where is water coming from? It is coming from the moon. So, moon is giving its coolness to soil through channels, and then this is how something grows as plant, which is again consumed. Now, this is the agrarian world order. This is agricultural cycle, the way it is visualized through cosmology, right? Similarly, you will find that even in understanding human body, there is significant usage of the drainage system, right? Drainage system in human body in Ayurveda. So, these are agricultural imageries that are used to make sense of a process that otherwise is opaque to mankind in the pre-scientific times, right? But it did accord a lot of logic and satisfaction to mankind, and therefore this is one way to make sense of things that are happening around us. So, the point is that these traditions that come to us, that are bequeathed to us as eternal stories, as origin stories, actually are deliberately established or maintained. So, it is important for us to contextualize and rationalize our understanding of these traditions, because they themselves are the product of the same. So, this is how these stories have been made. This is how these understandings have been bequeathed to us. Now, this process involves centralization of crucial themes by simultaneously excising variations. This is something that we discussed earlier as well, that not all imageries are very cogent, not all imageries are very coherent with the mainstream imagery that is bequeathed to us as tradition, as the central tradition, as the focus area, as the central point. So, obviously, in embellishing, in projecting one particular story as the central story, there is deletion of several other stories, there is incorporation of some other stories, there is subordination of some other stories, and there is some kind of acceptance of several other stories that are just existing there. I mean, there is not much counter or approval given to it. They exist, they just coexist. And that is why there are different stories about our existence in the same tradition. Now, such processes rework, such processes question, and such processes at times even subvert specific constituents of traditions without overtly challenging them. Now, I must owe this to Professor Kumkum Roy, who has worked on these Vedic Cosmogonies, and I have drawn majorly from her work to spell this out in a more simple way, right? Now, this is something that we have already discussed, that there are counter traditions, there are parallel traditions, some are allowed to exist, some are subverted, some are rejected, some are incorporated, subordinated. So, all these processes keep happening. Now, as a result of this, there is formal continuance of traditions, but it is only formal continuance of these traditions, but it is accompanied by shifts within the framework which can substantially alter the content of the tradition. So what appears as monolithic, central, invariable tradition actually is a result of several deletions and several acceptance of several other stories, and even when they exist as uniform, homogeneous narrative, within that there are several shifts that can happen over a period of time, that have happened over a period of time, and that is what we will try to track in other part of discussion, which can even substantially alter the content of this tradition. Hence, traditions are rendered fluid and dynamic despite their apparent monolithic character. So what appears from outside as monolithic, muscular, mainstream kind of Vedic tradition or cosmogony and so forth actually is a dynamic process, and it's not a changeless thing. Over different you can say historical periods, there are several changes made to it, and they are interwoven into some kind of a coherent story subsequently, and that is the way it is bequeathed to us in the name of tradition. So these processes, this tradition or monolithic looking tradition actually being fluid and dynamic, they become especially obvious in situations where disseminating or controlling traditions are interwoven with access to various forms of power. And this is important. As in political science also, we keep listening to this, that power is about controlling the narrative. And similarly, what comes across to us as a particular explanation of our origin, of our coming into being, of our rationale for existence and so forth, comes as a result of several such stories, origin stories contending with each other and operating in a context of power, where one narrative becomes the mainstream narrative. And this is how it is bequeathed to us as the tradition. Thus, the Rigvedic appeal of these traditions as aparushe or supermundane is told to us, whereas fact of the matter is that they are accompanied by substantial transformation. So it is embellished as supermundane, as not everyday, as not something which we can influence. We the mortals can influence. It is something that is given to us. It is something that is over and beyond us, and we have to accept it. So it comes to us as that kind of a thing in the name of tradition. But fact of the matter is that it keeps undergoing several transitions and several changes. It would be important for us to pause here and think about Rigvedic period as different from later Vedic period in terms of timeline and also geography. So this is a very textbook stuff that all of us already know, that when we talk of Rigvedic time, we essentially are talking of say 1500 BC to around 1000 BC, whereas when we talk of later Vedic time, we are talking of 1000 to say 600 BCE. And also there is some kind of shift in geography, shift in locale that we are talking about when we are talking of Rigvedic period and later Vedic period. So Rigvedic period, the area that gets encompassed is the Sapta-Sindhu area, the Sindhu river or Indus river and its tributaries, so that part of the northwestern part of Indian subcontinent. When we talk of later Vedic period, of course it seems that the authors of later Vedic literature perhaps are also familiar, in fact more familiar with the geography that is to the eastern part of this area that we are talking of. So there is a corresponding geographical shift associated with later Vedic times. Some scholars don't quite agree with this proposition. Nevertheless, for understanding purpose, or there is some kind of a general consensus about this shift. Now, similarly, this is the mundane everyday life that we are talking of in terms of time and space. But if we look at the cosmogony part of it, there is a corresponding change in content as well as forms of traditions across the Vedic period. So if you read Vedic or Rig Veda and also later Vedic literature, you will find that some aspects of the bequeathed traditions also undergo change with reference to the origin story and other existential purposes that are spoken of in this literature as big origin questions. So, cosmogonies within the Vedic tradition are illustrative of this relationship of simple undifferentiated to complex and differentiated social order, and that is the purpose of this topic being discussed. That when you compare this changing cosmogonies in Rig Veda to that of later Vedic literature, what we should be doing is that there is also the social change that is happening. We all know that Rig Vedic society represented a more simple and undifferentiated social order as compared to more differentiated and complex social order of the later Vedic period. And therefore, these cosmogonies are to be made sense of, or these transformed cosmogonies, these changed cosmogonies are to be understood with reference to the same social process of complexity and differentiation. And therefore, it allows us to make a better realistic sense of the changes that these cosmogonies represent over a period of time across the Vedic period, from Rig Veda to later Vedic cosmogonies. Thank you.